What I want to talk to you about is all about music, but it's what it means to us as a global society. Music is actually a real passport. That allowed me to come here to Perth and to travel constantly anywhere in the world. I carry with me my violin, and I can share music, which is the true universal language. Everywhere I go, I can meet people of different backgrounds, and without words, we're able to communicate, we're able to discuss about the essence of life only through playing the music. Actually, playing the instrument at a high level is also a language that integrates accuracy, philosophy, vision, empathy, and insight. It's very complete. It's a higher language that many of today's leaders recognize and respect. That language in particular is classical music. Classical music is actually what covers all the genres of music. What you call rock and roll and metal and pop and rap and dance music are actually just spin-offs of what basic aspects are contained in classical music. Music, like no other art, can move masses of people at the same time. It always relates to our inner tribal instinct. You're thinking of the rhythm, the rhythm that reminds us of times when we were in the bellies of our moms, feeling her every steps. And the melodies trigger a particular feeling inside us that can be as powerful as the most formidable drugs. So my point with all of this is, I think music, and I repeat it, classical music in particular, should be one of the first tools that a parent wants to give to his child. Having a child given the opportunity to play an instrument and learn from a professional is like unlocking his soul. Of course, all parents want their kids to be healthy. I'm a parent myself, and I can totally understand that sport would feel like the first priority for everyone. But sport is focused on helping the physical machine, but music training is really an opportunity for the kids to learn a higher method of work through one of the finest forms of art. Their brains will assimilate extremely complex formulas while serving a higher purpose, which is beauty and harmony. That training also allows them to develop their goals faster, even if those goals are not to become professional musicians. You have some very, very good examples, and if you dig a little deeper, you will see that very famous CEOs, presidents, and founders of prestigious companies are actually trained in music, and also leaders in law and science and medicine often have this basic music training that they learned at a very early age. Einstein, for example, learned the violin at a very early age and kept playing throughout his life. So, not a bad example, I think. Being trained as a classical music artist should not be an elitist asset. I think the necessary training should be used at large to raise the bar of the intellectual mind in general. It should also serve to humanize us in a way. Because indeed, violins can never be used when practicing a musical instrument. The violin would never withstand an aggressive movement. It's always negotiation with the instrument. It's always trying to respect the boundaries and the possibilities of this little box of wood. In music training, you're teaching kids the art of negotiation without explaining it explicitly. And one of the most famous examples of this century is what Maestro José Antonio Abreu has done in Venezuela, one of the most violent and dangerous countries in the world. I've been there and experienced what Maestro Abreu proposed as a system. It's called El Sistema, and it allows kids, street kids and teenagers, to receive training in classical music, and it is an alternative to spending their time in the street and being reeled in by a world of violence and crime. The result is really amazing, and it gave the music world some of the biggest stars. You probably heard of Gustavo Dudamel, who is chief conductor of none other than the Los Angeles Philharmonic. He's one of the pupils of this Sistema. And also, the main orchestra in Venezuela, the Simon Bolivar Symphony Orchestra, records for the super famous Deutsche Grammophon label. And so, music became their passport as well. Other examples in the past can include all of these wonderful musicians from the Eastern Bloc in Europe before the fall of the Iron Curtain. Musicians were among the only ones to be able to cross the borders freely. So nowadays, traveling is easier, but not always. You can think of many countries where barriers are very, very much in place still. One of the examples of music breaking those barriers is the New York Philharmonic concert in Pyongyang, North Korea. Politics and physical borders are stopping us as a human race, but language and culture open them. This basically opens the map to you. You can go anywhere you want, and you can be appointed in a position where it's based on merit, and nobody will look at your age, language, religion, gender, where you come from, religion or caste, you know? So it's really, truly the international ticket. And as a society, I think we should really take the path of funding the arts and artistic education properly. As a performer, I am after perfection. But as an educator, I also believe that training the next generation is a way to elevate our society and fulfill our goals. Some of the pupils of our universities will not necessarily go into a life in music, but others will, and they will represent one of the most amazing forms of art, music, of course, but classical music, I repeat, is the gateway to all of this. But then let's ask something, you know, what are we classical musicians bringing to the society? Well, we don't add significant zeros to the grand financial scheme of the developed world. We don't directly save patients from deadly diseases. We don't invent anything to make our lives more simple. We don't really help to connect people in a clear way. But then we could also ask ourselves why to pursue beauty instead of practicality. Why should we look for the ultimate experience and taste instead of just feeding ourselves? Why should we guard those traditions and culture that are now part of the past? Well, the answer is complex, but I would very humbly try to say that classical music has brought us the biggest achievements of the whole human race. And I know I'm saying this being very conscious of the greatest advances in technology. But in combination to the numerous historic events that inspired Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms and Schumann, they gave us today unequal moments of music and philosophy. Music of these composers is completely enlightened, and it serves as a reminder of a time where love was expressed through a 40-minute symphony and not 160 letters tweet. And 100 years ago, artists were looking for the perfect harmony, the perfect movement, the perfect result, you know, through means that today are completely obsolete in our opinions. Violin makers, for example, would work on a single instrument for weeks. In a few minutes, I will play a violin that was made in 1727 by the great Stradivari himself. Probably he was working on this instrument for months because it was one of his finest. To think of somebody like Stradivari doing the same today is very rare because it's financially not very viable, is it? To think that these craftsmen have worked without the protection of any state, corporation, or entity is quite remarkable. I think that by focusing on the micro, you know, on those small movements, so working on a violin or practicing a violin or any other instrument, it's possible to understand and accept the macro. And I also believe that everybody should have access to culture. I don't think we have to consume actively music, visual art, and contemporary art and ballet all the time, but it should definitely be available to us and close to us. So sustaining the artistic institutions is very important. And two ways to do this, we can go to a concert, we can go to an event, and support the top artists that dedicate their lives to this, but we can also accept and emphasize that our taxes and some of our contributions are redirected to the arts. So as I was told many years ago, the level of achievement of a society is basically defined by its scientific developments, but also its artistic scene and the well-being of its citizens. I don't believe it is necessarily defined by financial wealth. As an artist, I pride myself to helping people dig deeper in their souls, maybe try to find a more passionate approach about life. We musicians really, truly feel we have something to share with a lot of people. I would like to move from words to music, what I do best, and offer you a performance with some of my master students from the Edith Cowan University. And I will be using for this performance the wonderful instrument that Stradivari made in 1727 called the Barbaro. Thank you so much.
Bye.